I got to say, so just two things. Number one, my Bet Rivers podcast this morning, I did talk about, obviously, the NBA playoff. We'll get to that later, the NBA playoff game, because it was really good, especially fourth quarter later. I even talked about the NHL playoff game, which I watched the first overtime. It ended in 4 overtimes with 13 seconds left in the fourth overtime. 6th longest game in the history of the NHL.
Playoff hockey's awesome.
It is.
It is.
And then, anyway, so check it out. But where was I going with this? Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to hit on one more thing real quick before we get to baseball. Because yesterday I talked about, like, Juan Thornhill. You know, I don't like him complaining about, there's negativity in Cleveland. And so between the reaction to that and the reaction to me saying that most teams, that I would take Trevor Lawrence over Deshaun Watson or Lamar Jackson if I was starting a team from scratch. So the usual suspects, my man Cam, my man Xavier P., both of them are losing their minds on Twitter over this. Because every 18 seconds, Cam sends a tweet out about how Deshaun Watson has the greatest completion percentage of all time, the greatest hits of all time. There's no context. Half the things he puts on there I think he's making up. I don't know. But he puts no context behind anything.
We love Cam, though.
I love him. He's awesome, but he's insane. He's insane and great at the same time. But anyway, they were so worked up about this. Listen, I believe in Watson. I think he's going to turn it around. I don't think there's a single team in the NFL that if they had their choice, forget contract, I'll ignore contract because obviously Trevor Lawrence is making way less money than Watson. Forget contract, but everything else counts. I don't think there's a team in the NFL, including the Browns, that would take Deshaun Watson over Trevor Lawrence. Now, you feel free to disagree. I'm convinced Trevor Lawrence obviously was better last year. He's significantly younger. He has no off-field baggage. And he doesn't have the injury history that Watson has. Watson, and they both have one playoff win in their careers, and Lawrence has played less. Again, this is coming from a guy who thinks Watson's going to be really good this year. Really good. But I don't think there's a team in football that would take Watson over Lawrence if they had their choice, money aside. Gene, you disagree?
Maybe the Browns.
Yeah, I don't believe that. No, the Browns would never admit that. Of course.
Look, we put them on a pedestal, right? Like, like I said yesterday. We had 3 quarterbacks in there. I thought it was Deshaun Watson. It was Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, and Lamar.
And Lamar.
Yeah.
So people could say if you wanted to pick them now. There's a lot of people that could be mad as hell about the Lamar comment. I was leaning more towards Lamar Jackson than the rest of them. Lamar Jackson to me is like. He's won an MVP. I can't knock that, bro. I can understand if you say, well, he'd be injured. Okay, that's great. But some people can say Trevor Lawrence, listen, he played well 1 year, and that was last year. That was it. And that's the only.
But it's only 1 out of 2. It's not like it's 1 out of 8.
And 1 out of 2 with Urban Meyer as your head coach in the first one, which I think we could completely scrap from the record.
Yeah, it's fair that Watson and Jackson have had more good NFL seasons than Trevor Lawrence. That's fair, and that's really the only argument at this point.
I wouldn't,
because Lawrence is younger, less injury prone, less injured, and was better than both of those guys last year.
But we do have a smaller sample size.
That's fair. That's true. And if Trevor Lawrence can't back it up this year, maybe we have this conversation next year, and I have a different opinion, right? That, a year ago, Aaron Rodgers would have still been on the first tier because he had just won an MVP the year before. Yeah. And now we're like, well, he didn't have a good year last year, and he's older, so we're knocking him down.
Here's the thing. Yeah. If I would have said that, or if somebody else would have said that, they wouldn't really even have took it like that. You know the reason they'd be saying that.
No, but Cam and Xavier P., they're my guys. I'm friendly with those guys.
But they are. But here's the thing. The reason they say that to you is because they're fine with you until you say something that they don't like. And then it's easy as hell to be like, he's a Bengals. He likes the Cubs.
No.
So that's.
Yes, in general. Cam
right?
and Xavier P. don't do that stuff. But, again, I think Deshaun Watson is going to have a hell of a season. I am very confident he's going to bounce back. But I think Watson and Lawrence are both going to be excellent, and one guy's younger and has no baggage and has no injury history.
One thing Cam does say a lot, and then we'll move on to baseball.
Yeah.
That I do
agree. Get a lot of time.
That I do agree with.
Yeah.
Cam's right on this. We don't need Watson to be copy and paste replica of 2020 Houston Watson for the Browns to be successful this year.
Well,
like
they only won 4 games, so yeah, not his.
But his numbers, like we don't need necessarily.
They don't have to be that
we don't
high,
need
no.
4,900 yards and 35 touchdowns for him to win.
But it's got to be
10,
pretty
11
close.
Games. He has to be good, but like I don't think we need 4,900 yards and 35 touchdowns for the Browns to win.
I've already done told y'all, stop playing around with me. I've put the expectations out there. I need that. I need 4,849. Listen, if I had Baker Mayfield and we was talking about we don't need Baker to be that great, and then we decided we was going to trade 3 first-round picks, no, I want that all of a sudden.
That's
now.
right. That's
I
right.
need that now.
Cam and Mike right now embarrassing themselves.
No, because you got Nick Chubb, you got other
don't
weapons.
Tell me about Nick Chubb.
You have
okay?
so many weapons on this team that you don't need.
All right, let me
you
tell
don't
you
need
why,
40. You don't.
You know why you do? You know why you do? Have you looked at the other quarterbacks in the AFC?
Yeah, but they have so
What is
many
this,
options on
slapdick
offense.
NFC right
no,
now?
but they have so many options
No, they
on
don't
offense
have
to
it.
score.
So does Kansas City. So does Buffalo. So does Cincinnati. So does Jacksonville.
He could throw.
So do the
Deshaun
Chargers.
Watson could throw for 4,000 yards and
Browns ain't winning nothing.
30 touchdowns, and they
they're
can
going
still
out
win
in the
11.
first round.
No, their defense is much better.
On paper, we haven't seen it.
Smoke.
I mean, that's like. Yes, like we haven't seen it, but at the same time, we don't know for a fact.
Though again, those teams are proven.
Yes.
Proven.
And we've seen Watson do what he did in Houston. Yes, and we have not seen him do that in Cleveland, which is fair.
You just said
which
he didn't
is
have to
fair.
throw all those touchdowns, and then when you said it now, what if he throws 35? You just said 35 touchdowns.
I'm saying but
If Deshaun Watson,
G. Bush had said, and this is what Cam said, we need the 2020 version of Watson for them to compete.
yes, in that neck of the woods, absolutely.
At
Not
least.
for that. They don't need that to maybe get
That's
to the
what I'm saying, to
playoffs.
compete. For
If
them
you
to
want
be-
to compete for a Super Bowl,
Yes,
you need that Deshaun
but we're
Watson.
having two different discussions there.
Yeah.
I'm saying to compete in the realm that we think they could compete
is
in.
loaded.
I'm with you.
Loaded.
I'm with you.
You have to be great. You can't just if he puts up Baker Mayfield stats.
No, that's not good
They're
enough.
not going to the
no,
playoffs.
but there's a difference in 2020 Baker Mayfield or whatever Baker's best year was in 2020.
Give me
Deshaun.
them stats.
There's a
Nuggets, what he got to do? Give me the stats.
If he throws for 4,200 yards and 31 touchdowns.
Well, that's not that far off than what we're talking about.
The analogy G's using, I hate to keep throwing this back to G, but G was like, I need 5,000 yards and 40 plus touchdowns.
I need 5 racks. I'm
I don't
sorry.
think I think that is pushing the limit. If he does that, the Browns are winning the Super Bowl.
And they gave him another year. He got another game.
By the way,
than he had back then.
That's still silly. Even if he throws for 5,000 yards and 35 touchdowns, they could still lose in the first round of the playoffs. That's how. So could Kansas City. So could Cincinnati. What people don't understand is the AFC between the year Baker got to the playoffs and now is a million times better.
Night and day.
A million times better.
Because Herbert wasn't even really playing. Herbert was like a rookie.
He was a rookie. Burrow was a rookie. Mahomes was just starting to become elite, right? Like,
yeah.
It's totally different.
I get that.
I don't know how good Rodgers is going to be still, but the Jets are way better.
Yes.
If Tua stays healthy, the Dolphins are good. I mean,
they made the playoffs last year.
On
too.
and on. What if what's his name? Sean Payton gets Russell Wilson to play like Russell Wilson
and
again.
There's
That's
a lot
maybe
of,
also. Jacksonville, way better.
Yes. And I'm not saying that.
And that's without this division where we know that at worst Pittsburgh and Baltimore are going to be decent.
I'm not saying he could be a bum and them compete, but I think there's a vast difference from having statistically speaking, one of the greatest seasons ever for a quarterback.
Yeah.
I think he was the second highest QBR in the history that PFF has been tracking, which I know is not the end-all, be-all stats. I understand.
Second highest PFF grade, right?
That's what it was. Yeah, which I know is not the end-all, be-all, but it's a historically great season in certain contexts. I don't think he needs to be.
Isn't it funny that the guy had one of the greatest seasons ever and they didn't win? Again, I don't think that's his fault.
I know.
But it is funny.
It is. They were 4-12,
it's so odd that would have happened.
But my point is, we don't need historically great Deshaun Watson. Other words, now he could be historically great in context of what Browns quarterbacks have done.
Yeah.
I would like to see him have the best season the Browns
can't
quarterback.
win the Super Bowl
unless he's very good.
Forget the exact stats. The Browns can't win the Super Bowl unless Deshaun Watson plays at an MVP caliber level.
Fair.
They will not win the Super Bowl without that because in other years they could have. They could if Deshaun Watson played at a little above Baker in 2020 and the Browns were in the NFC, you might be able to get to the Super Bowl that way if the defense is great.
If the Browns
but not
were
in this AFC.
If the Browns were in the NFC right now, they could have Baker level Watson and
that
make
is
the Super
why
Bowl.
that is why I was so hot before because people said, "Oh, See, sometimes when you're in a fan base, you don't realize that you could take advantage of certain things, right?
Yeah.
You could take advantage of the fact that the AFC was not as good as it is. And when you see a guy like Patrick Mahomes go into the locker room and he's gone the whole second half, you're like, dude, this is your shot.
Yeah.
Are you gonna seize it, or are you gonna just be the Browns? They just turned out to be the Browns. And then you thought, well, look, we're going to be back there. Look at this team. No, it don't work that way, man. Now you look at just 3 years later, the climate is completely different. Now you're going to have to play the best you've ever seen. You may see the Browns be the best team you've ever seen in your life, and you still might not even make it to the AFC Championship game.
That's very true. That's how tough the AFC is.
It's a gauntlet, top to bottom.
That's it. It's so hard right now. And that's why ultimately, it's old news at this point, but that's why ultimately G and I and some others were talking about you have to get rid of Baker because the way the AFC was trending, you couldn't compete with it.
You had a ceiling with Baker.
Yes.
And that ceiling was maybe first round, one playoff win.
Right.
With Watson, the ceiling is win a Super Bowl. I just don't think you need historically, unbelievably, otherworldly Watson to reach that ceiling with the rest of the roster constructed as
I just, the problem is, what do you think? The Browns have the best roster in the AFC? They don't.
I think they have one of the 3 or 4 best rosters, yeah.
Okay, maybe but ultimately the other teams you're competing against have quarterbacks that have been playing at an elite level for the last few years, where Watson hasn't. That's a big difference. And you're doing it based on hope and this idea that I do think the Browns have a good roster, and I think they could potentially be amongst the 3 or 4 best teams in the AFC. But to definitively say, they're definitely one of the 3 or 4 best rosters, I just don't buy that because the other teams in that group have proven it the last few years. The Browns have not.
And they got the same guys. Like say, for instance,
exactly.
if you look at Josh Allen or you look at Burrow, they've done that 2 years, 3 years with guys, and it's the same people. It's the same offenses.
Right.
We hoping that Deshaun Watson, by week 6 is clicking. We haven't seen, and let's be truthful. In my lifetime, we have not seen a prolific offense.
Nope.
Ever. It's been middling.
And on defense, obviously it looks a lot better now than it did last year, but it's a lot of new faces. Just like you're talking about.
And
it's going to take some time to come together.
And that is totally and I'm not.
So to put them in that class with those top teams is just not accurate.
I think the 3, Kansas City, Cincinnati, Buffalo.
Yeah.
That is
to me right now.
Those 3 are by themselves.
I think you put the Browns in that next category.
Exactly.
And even that, to some degree, is being generous because they didn't play at that level last year.
But all the teams in that category have question marks.
Right. I think in that next group, they're with Jacksonville.
Yes.
The Chargers.
The
Jets and Miami.
Yep.
But those teams all have equally as glaring question marks.
But those teams were all better than the Browns last year.
Yeah,
the Jets were right in the same
Jets and the Browns were about the same.
Yeah.
Right? So those teams are in that next group, all trying to get to the Buffalo, Cincinnati, Kansas City group. And all of those teams, I think, could potentially get there. And I definitely think the Browns are one of those teams that could potentially get there and maybe have the most upside along with Jacksonville because of their quarterbacks, to me.
Very interesting.
But we got to see it. But I'm not putting them in that group until they prove it on the field.
Or you go, G.
No, and this is why it's very important for the Browns. So many times we see the Browns get to a point where it's almost like they're out of it before they even start. It's like they can't lose a bunch of games and then be like, all right, well, the middle of the schedule is easy, now they got to win 5 or 6. No, they
we're in that situation all the time.
Every year they're in that situation, and it's the division is too good for that.
Yeah.
I could understand if our division was the AL Central, right? If this was the AL Central,
AFC South, where Jacksonville's playing against a bunch of scrubby teams.
Yeah, Tennessee.
They went 9-8 and won the division.
Yes,
right.
If we were in those divisions, boom, I would say great. Now it just seems like they're up against it. They got to be ready to go week 1.
And you're right. And my point is, Bull, for them to compete this year, and when I say compete, I'm talking about
make the playoffs.
They better make the playoffs this year.
No, what is compete? Define compete.
To me, is be in the hunt for an AFC championship. I think putting Super Bowl aspirations on this team is too early. but also just saying, hey,
that's very vague.
But
you have they have to win a playoff game.
If you win an AFC Championship game and you're playing against an NFC team,
yeah,
you automatically got a shot.
I mean, Philadelphia's maybe the favorite.
They're really good. San Francisco's really good.
San Francisco's really good, but you got a shot.
Yeah. Of course, but so your argument is that
they need to win a playoff game this year.
Can the Browns win? Well, you might have to win 2.
I'm just saying they have to win a playoff game this year.
Okay.
Or I look at the season as a failure.
Okay, so for the Browns to win a playoff game, Deshaun Watson doesn't have to. What?
He doesn't have to have the second greatest PFF grade for a quarterback ever.
Of course not.
That's what I've been saying this whole time.
I mean, that's
literally what I've been saying the whole time.
Well,
we could have 80% of that Watson and this Browns team be as good as we think they actually can be. We don't need 100% Watson at his absolute greatest. 80% of that Watson can be.
For them to be a legitimate team to win a Super Bowl and win more than one playoff game, Watson's going to have to play close to that level of play. He's got to play at an MVP level.
I feel like we're saying the same thing in different ways.
And most isn't when you look at the individual years for MVPs, aren't usually those MVPs at a historical level? All of them.
I mean,
like
Lamar Jackson was like a weird historical level,
like
right?
because of what he was doing on the ground, right?
Yeah.
You look at historical level. I could look at Tom Brady a couple years ago. These guys are all. If you win an MVP or close to the MVP, you talking 5,000 yards.
Yeah, or at least 4,000s, over 30 touchdowns.
35, 36
completion percentage way high. So
all of those dudes, if you win MVP, you are playing at a historical level. Now, in my situation, I look at it like, hey, guess what? If you get a guy like Deshaun Watson, and you say he plays at an all-time level, and you can get home field advantage, that helps you tremendously. Because other than that, you're playing on the road. You said, I got to win 3 road games against historical greatest teams of all time.
Right.
Like, that's tough to do.
Right.
So I'll take that during the regular season.
Yeah.
If they're going to put themselves in a position to get a home field game.
I mean, the Chiefs just last year lost one of the greatest receivers ever, and still won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Still won the Super Bowl.
With just a tight end.
With a bunch of guys, and as great, Kelsey obviously Hall of Famer. Their wide receivers were a bunch of decent players. Decent guys. That's it. All right. We were going to talk baseball to start. We are going to get to baseball with Tim Kirchin. Let's first send it to Anthony.
Yeah, guys, you're going to talk about Watson having a phenomenal season. I know he's going to because I know Watson eats Built Bars.
That's true.
And you can eat Built Bars, too, if you use code LOCKEDON15 at Built.com. We love them here. I have one for breakfast every morning. Watson has them, and the whole offense is eating them right now on vacation. Go check out Built Bar. And without further ado, we want to bring in our guest. Never mind, he just walked away from the camera.
I will get to Tim Kirchin in a minute. Are you guys excited that Deshaun, I know we're going to talk about this later, but we just had a big conversation. So Deshaun Watson working out with his teammates. How excited are we about it?
I know Jay's excited. There is proof.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is proof Deshaun Watson is working out.
Yeah.
He is doing calisthenics. I was
never worried about that.
They have the snap count down. They know what he sounds like under center. I think a lot of people are excited.
Yeah, the thing with this whole Watson trip, like, I'm not sure if every quarterback's taking their offensive teammates to a tropical destination like he's done the last 2 years. They're all putting in off-season work together. But it is good to see video proof. Not that we had any doubt, but just good to silence anyone
Jay had doubt.
Just to silence anyone who had a single question that Deshaun Watson wasn't putting in work this offseason. There is video proof of him doing it.
Yeah.
He's working with his teammates. They're all coercing together.
There's no proof that he's working harder than he should be or whatever. Like, a couple of videos doesn't mean anything. I'm gonna assume Deshaun Watson is working as hard as he needs to.
Yeah.
Lack of videos don't disprove it. Videos don't prove it. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say he's working his ass off because if he's as much a dog as I think he is, he's embarrassed by the way he performed last year.
Totally agree.
And he wants to go shut everybody up that's dissing him. There was some idiot on Twitter yesterday, I don't know who it was, who when I said that Deshaun Watson stunk last year, this guy went on Twitter and was like, Why is Bull saying Deshaun stunk and why did nobody call him out on that? He was terrible.
He was not.
And he wants to shut all these people up. And, you know, the only way you're going to do it is with great play.
And hopefully what we can do is once he comes out and plays at that MVP level, we can then move into the sane world of
That's right.
solid teams, just like nobody is looking for Josh Allen on a
Yep.
beach somewhere.
That's right.
No one's
That's right.
hanging out with Joe.
That's right.
No
But
one's,
you got to prove it on the field.
when you
That's
prove it,
Here in
everybody,
Cleveland.
all of us will shut up, and we can just be like, yeah, we'll see what happens this year in 2024.
Okay.